morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Okay, another busy day ahead of us, so let's get right to it. Start with Matthew, please, and COVID coverage.
Thanks, Jeff. So just as the vaccine makers make that big safety pledge, we are seeing the first big safety valve kick in. Our reporting today will be focused on learning more specifics of what led AstraZeneca to pause trials in the U.S. and worldwide after a serious illness in a volunteer, on when or if this trial gets back up and running. Was this illness a reaction to the vaccine or just a sick volunteer among the thousands? The company calling it routine, part of a safety review. The New York Times goes a bit further, describing this as a suspected adverse reaction to the vaccine, citing a source who says a patient in Britain had a very serious nervous system inflammatory condition. We are not reporting that. We are trying to match that. As Fauci put it on CBS this morning, you have to treat anything like this as a suspected adverse reaction to the vaccine until you can prove otherwise. That's the way this works. And remember, Fauci just said yesterday, we've got to regain the trust of the American public on vaccines. Scott Atlas of the task force saying this morning that this pause is an indication the process is being done safely. On masks, Fauci on CBS this morning also saying he is frustrated to see Trump and most of the Carolina crowd violate the mask order last night. Experts re-upping the message on masks. Two scientists in a commentary in the New England Journal suggesting that masks might lead to a milder case of COVID in cases where they don't prevent it entirely. And then on testing, the thing that we've just never gotten right from the beginning. Experts have not given up on the idea of surging testing, even though it seems like Trump and his testing czar have given up on that idea. Overnight, experts from Duke and the Rockefeller Foundation concluded that the U.S. needs 200 million tests a month to control the pandemic, way more than current capacity. And this came after 11 NIH Institute directors issued a post saying as many people as possible testing is vital, even the asymptomatic ones, which of course contradicts that recent updated CDC guidance that we know came under pressure. Some key numbers this morning. We have not yet seen any acceleration in deaths and cases predicted by several different recent models, wondering if that will soon change. Sadly, we expect the case and death numbers to pick up more quickly today, as it was a long holiday weekend with backlogs at state health departments. On the CNN map, in terms of week-to-week new cases per day, there are many more states showing down than up right now. 20 down, 21 steady, 9 up. Again, we'll see if the averages hold once we get to the busier part later in the week. The top weekly increases in daily case averages on that map. Arizona, up 21%, seeing some small upticks after giant declines over the past few months. And then Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Illinois, all at about 20% increase week to week. We've got Omar Jimenez in Chicago on the Midwest story. The hotspots like Texas, Florida, and California have been largely declining in the last month. In California, yet another example of the long-lasting impact on our way of life. LA County already banning trick-or-treating and Halloween costume parties. In Florida, the Miami-Dade mayor is considering loosening the curfew and loosening restrictions on businesses and parks. He told a local talk radio station, we wanted to get past Labor Day this week. We should be opening up more and more of our businesses, and the mayor has scheduled some kind of announcement for later today. Rosa Flores in Miami. We've also got Nick Valencia in Atlanta. In terms of schools, it is a week of American students and parents adapting to life with virtual learning in a big way. We'll see if the districts get past all those cyber issues yesterday. The Hartford school system trying yet again to start the school year today, so far successfully, recovering from that ransomware attack that scuttled the first day yesterday. Technical issues in other places as well. New York City moving closer to the September 21st big opening day. The vast majority of classrooms passing ventilation inspections. And then the college struggle that we've been talking about each day. The University of Tennessee one of the latest and best examples of the struggle. Not only are there hundreds of infections and thousands of people quarantined at UT, but fraternities, according to the chancellor, are actively undermining the effort, communicating to houses on how to have parties without being caught, how to avoid the police and off-campus rentals. Bianca Goladriga has had a piece this morning wrapping up the struggle on college campuses, available on education lines through the day. We are also chasing reports that a student college football player in Western Pennsylvania at California University died of COVID. More to come on that. On the health front, a couple of important alarms sounding on the impact on children. More than 500,000 kids diagnosed with COVID throughout, and a 16% increase over the past 2 weeks, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics. And a new UN World Bank report warning that the pandemic is undermining decades of progress in reducing all kinds of childhood illnesses and deaths. 2/3 of countries reporting disruptions in regular childhood checkups and vaccinations. Flagging some really good Elizabeth Cohen reporting on remdesivir that published last hour. Remdesivir, the only drug authorized to treat COVID. While other countries have supplies aplenty, the U.S. is struggling with shortages and rationing because the country gave one company exclusivity, and some lawmakers are furious about this, and Elizabeth available to talk about this as well. And we've got Sanjay on the broader health picture. And then on the sports and COVID story, we've got increasing pressure on college football and lots of questions about anticipation of the start of the NFL season. Baylor is the latest school to cancel a football season opener after some other cancellations at Texas and Oklahoma schools. There's growing political pressure to restore big college conference play. Political leaders from around the Midwest sending a letter to the Big Ten commissioner urging the conference to reconsider its postponement. We've got the Chiefs-Texans opener with 22% crowds at Arrowhead Stadium tomorrow, and the Broncos also announcing a limited number of spectators will be allowed in a few weeks at the second home game. We've had Carolyn Mano up on this morning. And the COVID wrap pieces today are Nick Watt for 4, 6, and 8, and Athena Jones for 5, and 7, and 9. And I'll hold there.
Good. Thank you very much, Matthew. International COVID.
So AstraZeneca is the story for us as well, the setback when it comes to the trial. We've got Nick Robertson, who's covering this from London and is kind of getting the latest information we have on the patient there. And also we're looking at what is happening globally. We know that they say that the trial has been paused globally, but we are hearing reports that it's still continuing in some countries like India, so we're chasing that. And just, playing into this, we've got exclusive access to the Sputnik Phase 3 trial. Matthew Chance is going to be watching people take their shots and speaking to people there. So this is really good access for us, and obviously it kind of raises the whole question of, the need, rather. It raises the question of how important it is to keep these Phase 3 trials sort of at the forefront, and obviously Russia has a slightly looser approach to that. So Matthew will be available on that. And then a few other COVID strands. The UK is seeing a considerable spike in cases, 2,000 daily, and they've announced that they're limiting gatherings of people to 6 people from 30. It's all very confusing, and that seems to be this ongoing theme out of the UK. Schools are open, workplaces open, pubs are open, yet you can't hang out in your garden together. So Scott McLean is on that, and Boris Johnson is giving a press conference at 11 o'clock Eastern, so we'll see what he has to say and what the reaction is. France is also seeing an increase in patients in intensive care. We're seeing a spike in Israel, which Oren Lieberman is covering. And then finally, a story that Delia Gallagher is reporting on for us. The Pope had his Wednesday weekly audience today, and he wore a mask in the car as he was going towards the gathering, but then took it off when he actually met the public. He was behind a barrier. They're all getting screened, and they all have to wear masks. But it's just interesting to see how he's handling the situation. So Delia is on that.
Thank you very much. Business.
Chuck, good morning. U.S. futures higher investors a day after a sharp decline on the NASDAQ. Tech stocks plunged into correction territory yesterday. Tesla suffering 21% of its value. Meanwhile, Congress remains completely stuck in this partisan maneuvering over another stimulus bill. We know that the Senate will vote on Thursday on this procedural motion on this skinny bill, this scaled-down stimulus bill. Chuck Schumer telling John Berman this morning that he believes the bill will pass but that the current scaled-down bill is the result of a cynical exercise by Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell designed to simply check the box, and he knows McConnell knows it will not pass. Lauren, Manu, Bill, tracking that on the Hill, and Julia Chatterley and Allison Cossack are both available from New York. As we've discussed many times on this call, misinformation continuing to abound regarding coronavirus. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg telling Axios last night that Facebook does not have a plan to take down the kind of strong action against anti-vaccination misinformation that it has on the coronavirus pandemic. This misinformation is also winding up in a very unlikely place. Wall Street research notes suggesting that investors use these research notes as a way to trade on the market. And in August, one analyst painted a rosy picture about the potential for herd immunity, and the same analyst was also appeared in a hydrochloroquine video that was later removed for spreading misinformation. One Wall Street insider telling CNN's Christina Alessi exclusively, this was one of the more disturbing pieces of research he has seen in his 33 years in the industry. Christina Alessi is up and available on that this morning. Meanwhile, Joe Biden leading Donald Trump in Pennsylvania, but according to folks there, most of them trust Trump to handle the economy more than they do Joe Biden. Cities in the Keystone State, such as Williamsport, have largely gone unscathed on the health front, but really feeling acutely the economic downside as a result of the virus. Vanessa Yurkevich is live in Williamsport this morning, which during its heyday, believe it or not, was called the home of millionaires. Now the city is on edge. It's seen Little League Baseball World Series not being held there. The minor league baseball season has been put on hold. They estimate they're going to lose up to $40 million this year alone. And add to that the newly canceled route from American Airlines, which are supposed to have gone into Williamsport Airport, largely because of a drive in tourism. Vanessa Yurkevich in and available around a piece on that. Fantastic. Highly recommend shows play, and that is where we start on coronavirus.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Washington, COVID.
Okay, so after this rally in North Carolina last night where the president and his team openly disregarded the rules in North Carolina and without social distancing and mostly without masks, Fauci this morning saying he's frustrated to see him hold rallies without masks. He says he said that a bunch of times before. And just to note that this whole AstraZeneca mess is on the politics of this vaccine, it's a reminder that the president's aggressive timetable is really we're going to have to deal with some things before we get there. So at 10 o'clock, NIH Collins and Surgeon General Jerome are on the Hill, so we'll see what more we get on all things vaccine and politics. Richard talked about stimulus, and that vote will be tomorrow, and it's all about holding the Republicans together for that. And then on the voting part of this, a big part of what Trump did in North Carolina was last night was on voting. He again encouraged his supporters to vote twice. He also whipped up the crowd by ordering his supporters to act as poll watchers. This all, as Ben Ginsberg pens an op-ed that basically says not only is Trump wrong, but he's undermining Republican efforts around the country to get Republicans to vote. So that story on voting integrity today, and then there are no Trump events scheduled at the moment, and there is a noon briefing that we don't have a seat at.
Okay. Ben Ginsberg will be a guest with Brianna this afternoon. Okay, let's open it up for thoughts on COVID, please.
Hey, Jeff, Ben here from CNN Spanish. Just want to give you a heads up. China's Sinopharm Pharmaceutical is beginning testing of their vaccine in Peru. As we know, Peru is one of the countries in Latin America that has been hit hardest with COVID. So we got that. We had access to this phase of testing, and we'll have content for all the networks and platforms. Thanks.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Hey, Matthew, domestic.
Okay. Okay, so this really serious, really widespread wildfire emergency out west, millions of acres in 3 states, dealing with emergencies from almost 100 fires. In Oregon, the governor calls this a once-in-a-generation event. 3 fires burning 250,000 acres, large portions of the city of Medford under an evacuation order or get ready to evacuate. This is a city of 80,000 people. Washington State says more acres burned this week than in the past 12 fire seasons. We told you about the one town that lost 80% of its homes and buildings. There is, of course, the huge California Creek fire, still at 0% containment. Hundreds of structures burned, hundreds of rescues. New Day just had a strong interview with that camper who shared the video and being surrounded by fire on all sides. And just noting the climate crisis part of this, the governor and scientists at UCLA in particular are drawing a clear line to human-caused climate change for the hotter weather and the drier vegetation contributing to bigger fires. We've got Dan Simon on the Central California Creek Fire. Ryan Young is in Monrovia, California, near the big Bobcat Fire. We've also got Lucy Kavanaugh in Portland, ready to move to the other part of Oregon, and we're talking about that. In Rochester, lots of fallout and upheaval still over the Daniel Prude case. The police chief and his command staff are out, retiring, so to speak, in the wake of protests and accusations. The mayor had claimed the chief lied about the nature of the original call. The chief firing back about attempts, he says, to destroy his character. A new lawsuit filed by Prude's family, alleging a cover-up, alleging violations of training, saying that he was a man having a mental health episode and not a threat to officers or anyone else. And last night marked the 7th night of protests in Rochester, including demonstrators painting murderers in giant letters outside the public safety building. So we're still awaiting a word on where that investigation is going, and Alexandra Field stays on this story from New York. In Kenosha, we're also waiting for word from the Wisconsin Attorney General on the Jacob Blake shooting. Meantime, CNN has an exclusive interview with the only survivor of the vigilante shooting on the streets of Kenosha. Sarah Seidner interviewing Gage Grosskreutz, the one who was shot in the arm, says he was a former medic, that he came to peacefully protest and help others, and now he says he's in constant pain, excruciating pain that just doesn't go away. And just this other interesting note, the big move by the Oscars in the coming years. The Academy will require films to meet inclusion standards to be eligible for Best Picture, meeting requirements on the makeup of actors and creatives and film leadership. And I think that is it.
Okay, thank you very much. International.
So just one other story to flag. This fire that has broken out in a huge migrant camp in the Greek island of Lesbos. 13,000 people there. We've covered this quite a lot over the recent years. Phil Black is going to come up on this. We've got amazing pictures of the camp itself. But it went under quarantine last week after some COVID cases, and we think that people were very unhappy about that. And there's a sense that the fire could have been started from within in the camp itself. So that's just the other non-COVID or kind of COVID story that we're doing, and Phil Black is on that.
Okay, thank you. Business?
Aside from the headlines I mentioned, there's nothing else to add.
Thank you very much. Washington?
Okay, so on this expected troop drawdown announcement that we are thinking will come at some point today, both in Iraq and Afghanistan, both have been in the works, but the official announcement will come just days after this whole Atlantic story broke, and after our own reporting about how rattled the president was and the White House was with all of this. This story about the Department of Justice asked to defend Trump in the defamation suit. Collinson describes this as one of the most stunning maneuvers in the history of the Department of Justice. They've asked to take over the defense in the E. Jean Carroll case, who has accused Trump of sexual misconduct, arguing that Trump's denials come from while he was in office. To note, Barr is in Chicago today and has an event, and then we'll do Nightly tonight. So I expect he will be asked about that. On the story we talked about yesterday on white supremacists and DHS, Zach Cohen has new reporting coming this morning. He's gotten a hold of a whistleblower complaint that political leaders at DHS sought to downplay the discussion into the threat of white supremacists because it reflected poorly on Trump's priorities. Jessica Schneider will handle this for TV, and that will come later. Chad Wolf we see at 11 today, so we'll see if that comes up. And then just to note on Trump last night and his latest rally debate, his rhetoric on Harris escalating sharply, saying a Harris presidency would be an insult to our country. And that's what I got.
I think all three of those last 8 things you mentioned are worthy of good conversation. The comments he made about Kamala Harris, without question. Eugene Kelly bar, so he'll be asked by Pete Williams tonight on Nightly. I think that will deserve some follow-up conversation tonight. I'd point everybody to Steve Vladeck's Twitter feed for really strong analysis on that. And then the thing that you had before that, which just escaped me. The white supremacy threats was what it was, which I think which we covered yesterday and which deserves further attention today. Okay, before we move to politics, any other thoughts?
Hey, Jeff, it's David. I just wanted to make one point about contextualizing Ben Ginsburg. He's without a doubt the preeminent election lawyer on the Republican side and probably one of the most preeminent election lawyers in America. He's also had a front row seat to every Republican election initiative for the past 4 years. If he says voter fraud isn't a thing, that's kind of the end of the story. And we ought to treat that as a definitive answer as we cover the story throughout. Our refrain ought to be, Ben Ginsburg was across us for 40 years and says it doesn't exist.
So he'll be a guest this afternoon with Brianna and John and Eric. Let's heed exactly what David is saying and make sure we make that clear. Other thoughts?
Hey, Jeff, on what Trump said about Kamala Harris, I don't know if we're making this leap anywhere, and I don't know if we want to, but including our own Abby Phillip and others experienced this, his attack on black women is pretty consistent, and there's so many examples of it. And, to say that having her be president would be an insult to the country, to me, is both racist and sexist. And, again, there's this long string of a history of his verbal abuse of black women who are asking him questions and other things. But I just find it, again, nothing is shocking anymore, but it's just an amazing comment to make in a bad way. And I do think we have to make sure that we talk about whether or not that's what it is and show the clips of this long line of him doing this.
So Maria Spinella, Michael Cohen is a guest tonight, 10 o'clock on Don Lemon Show, which to all shows we should be promoting to, and there's a full screen. Let's make sure we're promoting to that. He talks about Trump's racism in that book. That would be a good way in on that as well. What he said about Kamala Harris this week. Any other thoughts?
I'll just add to that that it's also 180 degrees from some previous comments he's made about Kamala Harris, which to me is a tell that he now sees her as a threat, because he was unbelievably praiseworthy of the rollout of her campaign in the beginning of 2019. Before she was picked as VP and mentioned as a shortlister, he thought, she would be a good pick. This to me is like, in addition to the racism and sexism conversation that is important that Michael mentioned, to me it's his clearest tell that he thinks she's effective and a threat.
Other thoughts? Politics.
Joe Biden heads to the home of the Reagan Democrats today in Macomb County, Michigan, which is a place that really does tell the story of Donald Trump's electoral success in 2016. His ascendancy to the presidency can be sort of encapsulated in a place like Macomb County, a place that Obama had won, that Trump dramatically turned around to his favor. And Biden is going to make a direct appeal to working class voters, specifically white working class voters in many cases, but selling his Made in America agenda, and that is at 1:15 today that we expect him to speak. Part of the rollout of this plan is that on top of his proposed 28% corporate tax, he would put in a new 10% surtax penalty on companies that are manufacturing goods or moving operations overseas, and then profiting back home on that stuff. So he would also put in a tax credit, a 10% tax credit for companies creating jobs in the U.S. He has talked about this policy before, but not here in this all-important kind of political place that he is going to be putting this out today. He also discussed a bunch of executive orders he would take, which is something he has said you can't do everything by executive order. He's much more a proponent of legislation than executive order, but that is part of this as well. And as you know, Jake is going to interview him this afternoon, and I'll let others go through that rollout plan. Joe Biden's Latino problem that we have discussed several times on this call, where we've seen for months he's been sort of underperforming where Hillary Clinton was, appears in this NBC Marist poll that came out of Florida yesterday. Most acutely, this is a problem for him in Florida. I mean, you look at the divide between the Cuban vote, where Trump runs up the score as expected, and then where the non-Cuban Hispanic vote in Florida, Joe Biden underperforms where Hillary Clinton was and doesn't make up enough ground, and leads to the tied race there that we see in that NBC Marist poll. Obviously, part of what also makes it a tie is Biden's success with seniors and overperforming there. But this notion of how the Biden campaign addresses this issue that they've got will be a story going forward, not just in Florida, but obviously in other battleground states, such as where we find Kyung Wha today in Arizona. She's taking a look there at the critical role that suburban women will be playing in the Democrats' attempt to flip that state from red to blue. But it is also a battleground with a significant Latino population, but we don't see, again, because of the divide I was talking about in the different slices, we know it's not a monolith. We don't see the Latino problem for Joe Biden as acutely in a place like Arizona as we do in Florida. But Kyung will be taking a look at the suburban women there. I can't stress enough how much flipping Arizona is really part of the Democrats' path to 270 that they are putting a lot of effort into that state. And Richard mentioned that the additional NBC Marist poll out of Pennsylvania today showing Joe Biden with a lead there. Obviously, part of that Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania path that Trump busted through to get to the presidency. And I think that is where we start.
Thank you, David. Does anybody have any thoughts on politics?
Hey, Jeff, it's Cynthia. I think that the dive into how Trump has used the communism, socialism rhetoric as part of his hook for the Cubans in Miami, how that has resonated, and how the Biden team has not done enough to counter that. This is all that the only reason they are supporting Trump is because of that narrative. And that narrative and the fact that, sadly, I have to say, there's a population that's very attracted to bullies. And I just think that we have a deeper dive to talk about that. And I think, there's a stark contrast that they're not doing enough in Central Florida, where the Puerto Ricans have a very different take on Donald Trump, and where there is a large community of other nationalities that are on the fence. But as long as they keep pushing that narrative and no one is countering it properly in Florida, the Cubans are going to vote for Trump, and that's terrifying.
And who's your secret weapon?
I think you have several. I think you have voices that we haven't shown. We have Emilio Estefan, who has come out publicly to say that he is going to vote for Biden. There are several important personalities that do have weight that are saying, don't go that route. And by the way, those were Obama's secret weapons, the same ones that Obama had. And so I think that there is a way to counter the narrative in Florida that is not being taken advantage of.
Okay. Other thoughts on politics? Anyone else? Okay, digital.
32 million uniques yesterday. Trump's attacks on military leadership was the resounding number one. Highest engagement time is to Liz's 37 most absurd lines from Trump's Labor Day presser. The top video is Cuomo to Santorum. You have to start telling Trump he is wrong. The white supremacy assessment was most popular on social. This morning, number one is Collinson, over 20,000 concurrence on Trump intensifying the assault on rule of law as he fights for re-election. Virginia mentioned a line that's so powerful in there. In one of the most stunning maneuvers in modern history of the Department of Justice, lawyers have applied to take over the defense of Trump in a lawsuit filed against him by a woman who accused him of rape. He also does a really good job of tying in making a mockery of North Carolina's mask mandate. The straight-up Justice Department news story wanting to defend Trump in the Jean Carroll lawsuit is also in the top 5, as is our fact check. Trump makes 10 false and misleading claims about Biden during that North Carolina rally. The video showing the Postal Service mail being dumped in the California parking lot is in the top 5 for a second day in a row. Lots of interest in that, so we are seeking more developments on that story. The New Hampshire police chief refusing to reinstate the officer who was fired over racist text messages. Here's what's in the GOP's skinny stimulus bill, and the 13-year-old boy with autism who was shot by police after his mother called for help in managing a mental breakdown he was having. Those are the top stories this morning. A couple of headlines on COVID that are good and will get a lot of play today. A really strong wrap-up on just the return to remote learning that came with system outages, cyber attacks, and all kinds of problems. So wrapping up a lot of the themes that Matthew talked about in one piece. Then it's separate on the scathing 6-page letter from the New Jersey teachers sharing stories of frustration from their first days back in the classroom. The trick-or-treating being banned in LA County, it's just a big talker. It's a top social performer. And then the new report saying that the U.S. needs 200 million tests a month to get the pandemic under control. There are currently fewer than 30 million tests reported monthly. 3 other good things. Brianna has a piece coming with the working headlines, Wounded Veterans and Gold Star Families Answer Trump's Question About Why Troops Serve. This is off of her super sharp comments yesterday on this call. We have a good analysis from Luke McGee on Britain's internal battle over Brexit has reached a new low. And then we are up with the markets DLE, watching what's going to happen today, noting that Tesla is our most powerful way into all of that volatility for the broader audiences. Most of our Tesla stories are super strong performers, so we will stay on that today. That's it.
Thank you very much. John.
Good morning, Jeff. Melissa Cohen and Sanjay with all the medical headlines. There's a lot of them. AstraZeneca trial and where that stands and the issues with that. The letter on testing. We're watching next hour when both the NIH head Collins and Surgeon General Adams go before a Senate committee to discuss a wide-ranging hearing about vaccines, the current status of the coronavirus vaccine, flu vaccines, childhood immunizations on the decline this year because of COVID fears. There's a lot to dig into there. We're watching it, and we'll turn the news there. And then 11 a.m., these new studies dropping on impacts on young adults. They do get sick from COVID, and how hospitals are able to contain the infection inside the hospital walls. Dr. Richard Besser on that, Dr. Richard Coe of Harvard. We have Dr. Larry Comey, a vaccine expert. And then next hour, booking to flag, Dr. Chris Purnell, an African-American woman in New Jersey, who was part of the Moderna trial at Rutgers. She's currently vaccine trial, getting inoculated, so we're going to have that conversation with her. Hitting all the areas of the country, Rosa Flores on the Florida death mark approaching 12,000. Out of Chicago with all the Midwest headlines. The Bianca Rodriguez College Outbreaks piece is going to air next hour, and just this morning we're already seeing more examples of that to top that. Andy Scholes on NFL beginning tomorrow. The pressure on Big Ten football. We are booking out on the Big Ten story this afternoon. Another booking to flag. Brooke has the Tuscaloosa mayor. We're after just a couple of weeks of shutting down the bars. He's allowing them to reopen. Cases are down and around the University of Alabama, but they're still at a pretty high number, so we're going to question him. Is this happening too soon? Manu Raju on the skinny relief bill, the state of play of that. The Vanessa Yurkovich Williamsport profile piece that Richard Davis flagged is airing right now. And we will get international whips, including trying to understand the UK restrictions, the new gathering restrictions that are being announced there by Boris Johnson. 2020, Biden with his big speech in Michigan as he gets to a swing state. Made in America, what does that plan look like? If at 115 we will take it. We have Arlette Saenz around that. John Kent has the lieutenant governor of Michigan. John Harwood and Caitlin Collins split the White House. Trump and all the news he made on voting and double voting and poll workers yesterday. And Kamala Harris. As mentioned, Brianna does have the interview with Ben Ginsburg. We'll let that breathe. It'll be during the back half of the 2 o'clock hour, but there's tons to discuss with him. The DOJ and E. Jean Carroll defamation lawsuit story, Karen Scannell and Evan Perez on that. Steve Laddick is going to be joining Jim and Poppy next hour with his take on it. Ellie Honig later on this afternoon. Barbara Starr on the troop withdrawal. And Ryan Young and some bookings throughout the day to keep us on the California wildfire story.
Thank you very much, John. Washington.
Good morning. Pamela Brown is in for Jake. We'll have Nick Watt and his coronavirus wrap with all of those COVID headlines. Sanjay joins on the AstraZeneca trial. We'll watch that 10 a.m. hearing with the Surgeon General and the NIH. Dr. Jha is also booked with us. He'll talk about those 200 million tests. He's been huge on the testing front and is back and forth with Giroir. Governor Phil Murphy talks to us a little bit about where we are on COVID, kind of a step back as we head into the school year where New Jersey is one of the states hit hardest. Caitlin Collins from the White House on Fauci frustrated with Trump's rally, all of the lies on voting and the attacks on Kamala Harris from yesterday. Arlette joins on Biden's economic push in Michigan. Barbara on the troop drawdown. Sarah Seidner has her exclusive with the surviving victim of the vigilante shooting. Kyung takes a look at those suburban women in Arizona. And, of course, Jake is taping his interview with Biden during our hour. Federico will have a newsy bite rolled out sometime after.
And in the Situation Room, we'll be watching to see what else we learn about this AstraZeneca pause and was it an adverse effect. We'll watch to see where the case and death numbers go post-holiday weekend and look to see whether there's any acceleration in the numbers. We'll continue to hit these hotspots where we're starting to see upticks, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Illinois, and so we'll get to all of those threads with the Nick Watt and Athena Jones wrap pieces. We'll also get to Matthew Chance on the Russia vaccine and hopefully hit Robertson on the spike in the UK. Out of the White House, we'll follow on this continued disregard for mask wearing on the heels of last night's rally. Fauci saying again he's frustrated by this. All of this is Trump continues to lash out at Biden and Harris on the campaign trail about a call and comment about Kamala Harris, that electing her would be an insult to our country. We'll be watching for the announcement on troop withdrawals and follow on the DOJ stepping into this defamation suit. And we will keep an eye out for sound from Barr on nightly. We'll watch Chad Wolf at 11 and see if there's any follow on this white supremacy whistleblower complaint. And we'll watch Biden this afternoon. Certainly we'll be standing by for any news-making sound out of the Jake interview around the time of our show and be ready to turn that. And and we'll be watching for any developments from the Wisconsin AG on the Blake investigation. We'll continue to monitor the fires, and we'll be ready for anything else that breaks through the day today. That's where we're starting.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything they want to bring up?
Couple of things, Jeff. On the troop drawdown, I just noticed that late this morning, Brett McGurk had a very interesting thread about what a fraud he thinks this whole thing is, because his argument is we've deployed thousands of more troops around the Middle East, post the Soleimani killing, to help the Saudis and to protect American forces who are at increased risk. In his mind, it's just an interesting counter to we're pulling out. And I just had two questions. I was just wondering if anybody is hearing anything about when, like, the first drop might be from Woodward's book. I would think the Post would be doing that soon.
I think that I think we'll have we're looking at that closely for hopefully sometime later today. But we gotta, we're keeping an eye on it.
Cool. And the other question was, I was just really surprised at some of the crazy shit Mark Meadows was saying last night about the Durham report and all of this amazing stuff he's seeing that shows how many people are in trouble. Do we have a timeline on Durham or anything?
Yeah, his comments were, I believe, yesterday morning after a Fox Business gaggle, and they were highly inappropriate, showing, if indeed true that the White House is aware of what's going on in the Durham report, which is completely inappropriate. Other thoughts? Okay, let's make sure we're, obviously we have Jake Tapper sitting down with Joe Biden. If there is news out of that will be available tonight for our programs this evening and tomorrow morning. We have the Michael Cohen interview tonight on CNN Tonight with Don Lemon at 10 o'clock. Let's make sure we're pushing to that. And we'll keep our eye on whether on the Woodward excerpts at the appropriate time. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.